In today's episode of Unsolved Mysteries, we're going to dive into one of the most weirdest deaths from London, known as the Joyce Vincent Case. What's interesting about this case is that the victim died from unknown causes, and her body was found literally 3 years after her death, according to the police reports. So, who exactly is Joyce Vincent? How did she pass away? Also, why was her body discovered 3 years after her death? These are questions that still need answers, but let's dive deep into the clues to come up with our own theories and speculations. Let's get into this case now. Born in Hammersmith on October 29, 1965, Joyce Carol Vincent was raised near Fulham Palace Road. Her parents had immigrated to London from Grenada. Her father, Lawrence, was a carpenter of African descent, while her mother, Lyris, was of Indian descent. Following an operation, her mother died when Vincent was 11, and her 4 older sisters took responsibility for her upbringing. She had a strained relationship with her emotionally distant father, whom she claimed had died in 2001, but he actually died in 2004, unaware that Vincent had predeceased him. She attended Melcombe Primary School and Fulham Gillett School for girls and left school at age 16 with no qualifications. In 1985, Vincent began working as a secretary at OCL in the City of London. She then worked at C. Ito and Law Debenture before working at Ernst & Young. She worked in the Treasury Department of Ernst & Young for 4 years but resigned in March 2001 for unknown reasons. Shortly afterwards, Vincent spent some time in a domestic abuse shelter in Haringey and worked as a cleaner in a budget hotel. During this period, she became estranged from her family. A source involved in the investigation said, quote, "She detached herself from her family, but there was no bust-up. They are a really nice family. We understand she was in a relationship, and there was a history of domestic violence." End quote. It has been speculated that she was ashamed to be a victim of domestic abuse or did not want to be traced by her abuser. As a victim of domestic violence, Vincent was moved into a bedside flat above Wood Green Shopping City in February 2003. The flat was owned by a Metropolitan Housing Trust and was used to house victims of abuse. In November 2003, after vomiting blood, she was hospitalized at North Middlesex Hospital for 2 days due to a peptic ulcer. Vincent died of unknown causes around December 2003. She was an asthma sufferer and had a history of asthma attacks surrounding her peptic ulcer, which had been suggested as a possible cause of death. Her remains were described as mostly skeletal, according to a pathologist, and she was lying on her back next to a shopping bag surrounded by Christmas presents she had wrapped but never delivered. It is not known to whom the presents were addressed. Neighbors have assumed that the flat was unoccupied and the odor of decomposing body tissue was attributed to nearby waste bins. The flat's windows did not allow direct sight into the accommodation. It was a noisy building, which may explain why no one questioned the constant noise from the television, which remained turned on until she was discovered. Half of her rent was being automatically paid to the Metropolitan Housing Trust by benefits agencies, leading officials to believe that she was still alive. However, over 2 years, £2,400 in unpaid rent accrued, and housing officials decided to repossess the property. Her corpse was discovered on January 25, 2006, when bailiffs had forced entry into the flat. The television and heating were still running due to her bills being continually paid for by automatic debit payments and the debt forgiveness. The Metropolitan Housing Trust said that due to the housing benefits covering the cost of rent for some period after Vincent's death, arrears had not been realized until much later. The trust also said that no concerns were raised by neighbors or visitors at any time during the 3 years between her death and discovery of the body. Vincent's remains were too badly decomposed to conduct a full post-mortem, and she had to be identified from dental records. Police ruled the death by natural causes as there was nothing to suggest foul play. The front door was double locked, and there was no sign of a break-in. At the time of her death, she had a boyfriend, but the police were unable to trace him. Her sisters had hired a private detective to look for her and contacted the Salvation Army, but these attempts proved unsuccessful. The detective found the house where Vincent was living, and the family wrote letters to her, but as she was already dead by this time, they received no response. and the family assumed that she had deliberately broken ties with them. The Glasgow Herald reported, quote, "Her friends noted her as someone who fled at signs of trouble, who walked out of jobs if she clashed with a colleague, but who moved from one flat to the next all over London. She didn't answer the phone to her sister and didn't appear to have her own circle of friends, instead relying on the company of relative strangers who came with the package of a new boyfriend, a colleague, or flatmate." End quote. Overall, the death of Joyce Vincent is quite unfortunate, but at the same time, makes many of us scratch our heads as to figuring out what happened to her. With someone who has been loved by her friends and family, it's truly a mystery as to why she passed away unexpectedly, especially when she was just simply watching television in her living room. Whatever the truth may be, Joyce Vincent will be truly missed, for the world has lost such an innocent individual. So, did Vincent really die from a possible asthma attack as the police speculated? Was there, with great certainty, that no foul play was involved? And if not, who exactly murdered her? These are questions that still need answers, hence why this case is unsolved. Hey guys and gals, this is MisterShinRamen, and I just want to thank you for making it this far. Did you enjoy the video? If so, it would be greatly appreciated if you can leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel for more future content. Till next time, stay safe and stay scared.